Welcome everyone to this week's teachings on Kamalashila stages of meditation. We'll now begin with our prayers.
To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, one thus gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one God to bliss, knower of the world, supreme God of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When, O supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced 7 strides and said, I am supreme in this world. To you who are points and I bow, with pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best, supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like the spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not, incomparable wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms, unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom, too well established in the trainings, the holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with perfume, flowers strewn, Mount Meru, fallen sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offer to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your truth body, from billowing clouds of your wisdom and love, let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma, in whatever form suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh yeah, this one.
This song again lah.
Oh yeah, oh this one. That's right. 오야 관계 땡진 제바 중각과 매바 기매바 체바 매바 땅매바 오아 매바 좀매바 다데도미 땡진매 저반이 시시된바 저바 산지 만남제 담바 dello 차차로 오야 다 드니까 소리 그래서 단다 토베 밀리들와 아니 쳐줘발이야 대신 콤베 밀리 던져 잡으실 게나 쳐줘발에 콤바당 대화다 쳐 하고야 용마도 던져 많이 받쳐 하고 통계실 게 내때야 개바 망보차 지그리데 산제 지된도 감도 전에 쳐 넘버 따봐 다른도 공부시라래 다른 지된지 감들이야 산제 지된도 전백값이 있어라 좀 깔바시기도 와 지인도 그 산제 좀 된데 따보 변구세 연대 군대지 산제 지된지 감라죠 아니 되게 쳐 땜배 쳐대 단단 만노바체 아니 최냠솔랭게 최생게 튼지 강간 좀배 갑시래 되어라 디인데 어딘데 갑들이야 아니 알아서 sendice buge togu liya mesidi so machu bache ani yawa chima penje samta ku yora karesana sendi ko ta tu tenge marwa samba mita warwa tindu sa ko lute le de grete sem de chamu sen do yora yangja ke walen yora o tindu sem de yangja chamu je cheni kyalande 교황의 바시 단도 따보 저와 이다 따보 텐델이 깨다 사담이 깨와 상부 단단한 시추추에 겐케버시지 토마토데 니 가릴 라레르스네 주단 겐레 라레라 남반한 시잖아 아니 티 교화 칸돈로 만도다 칸돌레 말로테 신다시 왕메도 챙게다 당게 요 마레시라 주인이 소설이어레스 저 상벌은 더 삼나 소설이 주진 사이어레 멤버는 더 삼나 소설 주진 사이어도 레 교화다 미교화 심재신을 처바네 아니 심재신 라나시 더 동행 용견실에 삼네 사토나시 마레삼 아니 콜이야 소주발을 소바체나 콜레네 베리체네 동해 용거래섬 대관에 소수령아 예성지관에 샹라 처바 진내지 샹라 개와 주바이나 이 개와 참하다 미 개와 상부터 구여라 어디 개와 참아 편지 단다 주에시 들어와 최다부터 들어 야 뒤지 주나
So here, first, we should recognize that we have this human life right now. And with this human life that we have, we are able to accomplish the Dharma. Unlike, say, an animal who is unable to comprehend the kind of instructions and actually carry them out, that doesn't have the faculties. Some rebirths are like that. We right now have this kind of life, the human life, where we are able to comprehend and actually take up the Dharma into practice. And not only that, we have in this world the Buddha's teachings. It's extremely rare for the Buddha's teachings to occur within the world. They're sort of called eons without a lamp or a light. But we have right now this kind of circumstance wherein we have met with these extremely rare teachings of the Buddha who was able to attain this state wherein he had abandoned all faults and attained all good qualities and taught what should be adopted and what should be abandoned in an unmistaken kind of way. So right now, while we are able to hear these teachings, while we have met with them and have all of the kind of conditions to be able to practice, we shouldn't just let our life go by, sort of use our life solely for feeding and clothing ourselves, taking care of the affairs of this life, but recognize that this life is impermanent. We are going to have to die and move on. The extremely subtle kind of mind, although our body is cast off at death, that kind of extremely subtle mind will continue and and we will continue to take rebirth again and again in the future. And so if we are to take rebirth as, say, an animal or as a preta, a hungry ghost, we are going to be unable to continue to practice the Dharma in such a bad rebirth. Whereas if we are born as a human or a god, we have the continued ability to practice the Dharma. And so according to Buddhists, well, what does that rebirth depend upon? It depends upon causes and conditions. No one sort of creates our future or sends us to another realm, but rather if we meet with bad circumstance, it is due to the causes that we have created. And if we meet with good conditions, it's again due to the sort of causes that we have created. And so this means that we can determine how we will be reborn in the future by the kind of causes we create now. If we abandon harming other sentient beings based upon the recognition that others are just like me, they just want to have happiness and they don't want to suffer. And in that way, we give up any sort of kinds of actions toward others that create suffering for them. Through our body, speech, and mind, we abandon harm and we do virtuous actions. Then we can ensure that we have a good rebirth in the future. So this is the first level of Dharma practice, of thinking beyond just this life to having a good rebirth to continue practice in the future.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's oh, they indicate Niri Metinalwa. And it's Shandan Dundisi to the Sojabala Sobalunga is to be Megu to the Pa, Chini Shala Pambala Soba troop. And it Joangamanam Susasha, the woman Boyangura. Joangamanam Toma Mevana Shanji Sojabala Soba, but subsequent Mambusayora, Marazu Tangi Maramato. Or Tetsuya to get Mambusayora some. That is a Madibare some Chania, the Bali Shakbache, the Bali Shakbache and a tire or no. The bay and then the Shakbache and Jessim Janet Andrea or no. Or the Bud Diet to any charge or soba. Ra Chamba to Simjation and Yinji the Chamba Combala soba. Oh, and it's Tunshala soba that so Mambusai or not take what diet on that. Oh, Niri Mechinalia. The ring is some jelly chop on the man, Lunga is going to charge me some. Watching you to be in some near some luta. And it your Toma Mevana Sabe, the Balian, you watch in the Shabache to the Chena. And the court you watch him a lot of milky co touch zero. The Zako, Joachimang is only get down, lot of milk, your Sambuchula Malade, social Rawa years on that. Woman, you wake up so. Comes the Rawa Jews and Tuna bars. Getting Dirtan Zimber Mechena, Yansalo, and Shawan Jojo, what television Kangalanja. Tanda Sosu Kawachima Kandu Chumanju, Kawa Tombo Lada Me, regular Sobatende Kawam, Nason Kawama, Tendesi Makiti, Social Rawa, etc. Getting Rawang in Ju to uses. Judiler Karituma to Rawa, you do Nikawaki Majes, Social Rawa. Getting Rawan to the Tunava. Tanda de Mechin Deliane, de Kawachima Lada Miliki, Judy Truku, Resora. Getting Dirtan Zimber Mechina say, Milu Cabaj and Dito Backup de la Nason, the Kawa Sambol, Malun, Kawa Sambuchi, Kune, Topjigi, Kawa Nason, Malun, and Zimber, Sadami, Kawaji, into the Machina search, the Channel do them. Getting Dirtan Zimber Mechina, Nason, Malun, Social Hada Milu Kabias, Rang Machina say. Yansa Luna, Shaman, Jujurwas, the Yansa. Yawa Yada Tondula Soba, Jawa Yang Sabu, Tulama Sigora. When those of the Jawa Sambulada meet Jawa Sigora. Or Tilma Tondura Chilchiki Sona. Telechina Kangre, and the Kaija Meduanga Hagoda. Church to be a said of Tinde Samluta, Nuba Kayomara. O Tindu Tanda Milu Kabar Didi. Tanda Meva Mata Hasha, Kawashima, Pensegi. Tanda Truguretina and the Tambu Case Shute. Sada me, Jawa Sambuji Toby, Tashi would ace. Oh, teach you Chungi Church, Chutambuti Teredwa, or teach.
So, therefore, kind of day to day, as we are living our life, we should at the least be thinking that we should abandon these 10 non virtuous actions, such as killing and stealing and harming others, and do as much to benefit others as we are able. In addition to that, we should think about the kind of negative actions, the non virtues that we have accumulated in countless rebirths, prior rebirths. And so, thinking about how we have killed and done sort of unimaginable negative actions, we should work to sort of purify those by giving rise to regret for those past actions. It's just a matter of not remembering them. We have done these things in the past, but by giving rise to regret, we are able to purify whatever kind of negativities we have accumulated. We can do things like engaging in prostrations or generating attitudes of love and compassion, reciting a confession and so forth, and making the kind of pledge not to harm others in the future. But if we are able to, at the least, again, engage with this attitude, I'm not going to harm others in any way, and thereby abandon the non virtuous actions and strive to benefit others as much as we are able, in addition to purifying those kinds of negative actions that we have accumulated in the past, then it's certain that we can gain a good rebirth in our future life as a human or a god. And so, as Chandrakirti has said in the entry to the middle way, at this time, when we have the sort of independence or freedom with all of these favorable conditions, if we fail to take advantage of this situation of having that kind of autonomy and instead fall into the abyss of the lower realms, then how will we be able to get ourselves out of that situation in the future? So right now we have this kind of freedom, this rebirth as a human with all of the kinds of qualities and characteristics to be able to accomplish the Dharma. But if we don't sort of take advantage of this situation in order to ensure a good rebirth in the future, and instead squander it, we could be born, sort of fall into this abyss of the lower realms where it's extremely difficult to get out because we don't have the ability to even say understand the Dharma if we're say born as an animal. And so with this, it's saying that we should, while we have this kind of situation, while we have obtained such a favorable rebirth, put it to use, meaning that we should take this opportunity to purify our negativities, engage in virtue, and abandon non-virtue. This is the sort of first level of Dharma, of a being of small scope.
Oh yeah. Oh, the individual chungu kapso. So ke chawa tsigirwa. So ke chishure. So dawa tugeta kangese te ke chishure. Ene so nangmi nyendege dawa tugeta kangese te ke chishure. So chiso lungbala soba kekaba karina. So chiso te ke chishure. Di kangese ta dawa tugeti ke chishure sowara. Di chena dibalwa. Indaya soso dan soso nangmi chiso tondalia kangese ta tewa tuye cheto ani shanda mi shanda dan chiso shanda da o tezole ya neba shanda marese ti tangbudira soso kese soso tewa tu kangese kariche ne tepsi cheura ti tondalia ani mi shanda da semje shanda chiso shandalia neba ke soche machimbala soba lunga yusukone yani kasore oh 차와체는 지금 말해서 대방구로 해서 거다 어 기부청이 쳐대 당부티래도 지당 알아서 되버라 소소케 시시세그레 소소낭메 소소 치소케 심부스베 있나야 어 대냠도 소소 대화 두개 강에서야 된다려 샬레 차와체는 지금 말해서 영화 예수님께서 샬레 너바체는 지금 말해 대방구도 차와대 어 기부청이 쳐대도 하야
So, at this level of the Dharma of the small scope, we are still holding ourselves as most important. We value ourselves and hold like our family, our community, our country as being most important, and therefore are focused on accomplishing our happiness and removing any kind of difficulties or troubles that we experience. And so, in order to accomplish that happiness, whether it's of our family or our society or whatever, and remove any kind of difficulties, we should recognize that we shouldn't harm others in order to accomplish our aims, whether it's other beings, other societies, and so forth. If we kill or harm or steal, that's going to create suffering in the future. So at the very least, we are recognizing that in order to, although we still are at this level of holding ourselves as most important and our family and so forth, that accomplishing our aims means we should do so in a way that that gives up any kind of harm toward others through our body, speech, and mind. So although we're still holding ourselves as more important, we are abandoning harm toward others.
Oh yeah, that in it given drink it chasing Dele Samlu said they are torching the raw. That shall sharp and lunga some corner. And it shall pember to me. Nick young a man of sack by shall sort of a tickle shack by saying your chair. Nearing mason at each other. You could take one more task at a single cave, some tagwars in your tagwar, some tangiora. A tea in the nick washima, had a milky could touch his heart, social like by your necessary doa. Oh, tea in the I chose him a had a milky in there. Oh, tea uncle, yes, on cure, don't do that to the water. In a call had a milky and a tunga marwa. Razahaku to a milky and a cure, cave, now I show double set and many mendiba taught to Baba Tunga Budua. Oh, tea in the had a milky and a tend to tell us Mare some giora. Had a meat and I tend to tell us to wear yona. Ti tup gure dia tendu tewa mare sale kena ko dunge yore ni meli kena ko dunge duwa kega na chile sokwa ni soso rawa meba pungbun dor ko ba shiko ba ya rawa meba kewa chila ko ba soso ledan yum be wange wa ngar sa be ledan yum be wange ni kewa lan ko ba kewa sambu dunge ba lan ko ba sire te ora o ti ndu ta pungbun dor le che me ko ba kisi che me ko ba Rana Leda Newman Bewang Sag, Leg, Rameba Kewata, Rameba Chivala Soba, to do Noa, Timeba Soko do some Gura, Timeba Soya Yona Mana some Gura, Tungeli Tendo Tabe, Tarbasigua, Tisi Meguba, Tungan Meguba, or Tindesi Judy Yona Menas and some Tangura, or Tinjure Yuaresa. Or Tine Koa Korega, Rana Rameba, Pumbun Dorle. Kiwa chigla ya disha ya kiwa chigla tendention de yora o tipa me so ya tab yora esa ti kare sne tita nyomo bangura nga samsa nganji se nga samsa soso ke chishu chinde ne pe nga rawa sida nga sidu chi rawa de bachi sobu pasha sem pasha tinda chi yebe sore saml kogdo o tinde tadun zimbati shukchene Any Chagdangi Kanga Yungu or Resungora. Dadun Zimbanga, some round to a shivachi over some, and then I said the Kashim Bushivachi some, and then I dawa, Tunge, dawa to be charging Tunge Yong and Gage, or Tisula Mini, Chaba Tawaki Urdo, to a chun till Kondo Sagre Yagachun till Hajan Shinjaki Urdo. Chagdangi Wangi. Chagdangi Wangi. Any less asuna, give less asuna, and had the milky gora. Chagdangi wangi sorata, Chagdangi wangi, make a less asuna, yes only kigora. Attend Chagdani with the pangura. Sosoli chakbata, soso longzoli chakba, Naye say, Naye Kangba, Naye Chizu, Hajan Shenja shook Chambuchora, or the maps of Yora, and the Ganzos, Kansa Shendale, Ganzu Chos, Konzu Chos, Chagda. Some Lunidua, or the Mabas over Simja Kanga, Down de la Tunga Mendova, Kanga Chibuati Sonda, Chagdan Mabas over Simjala Chagdanda, Nobo Yagadan Tugachin, Chagdan the Mabasune, or Tioanga any less item, Mabasuna, in a Tarba Togura, Tendo Tarba Togura. Quacoya, Judy Chagdan Wanga, Kidi less abadera, the Chagdan Mabas call less I yorno, or. Don't never say. And all that in Ducasura. That do the Chagdangi Wangi, and they call Jiggy, call it and to Tabachito, Chagdan Bangure, some Chagdan Pangsona, and it is Latene call ya Rama Katung Mara, Kibun drink the redwa. 기분 정들이야 안에 아주 저 건조 초서 전에 지금도 지난 기분 정지 나라서 세대 요하르데 있는 아주 건조 초니 심전에 착다 이리 시간이 매서고요라 뭐볼이야 착다 이리 착다 기에도 매서고라 어디 방송나 아니 기분 정세 타르바도 도고라 기비 던다 찍더라 어디 방에 던달래니 다음에 봐다 미다바 참아 거미야다 되네 건주님이 거미야다 네 착배견 거미야 차도 메시야 나게 메시야 남신 메시야 차도 나게 단 님만 보여라 대수 강간 이리 메시나 초르다나 근데 타르바토베 땐도 타르바토베 줄로 두거라 던다니 버디 뒤쪽으로서 다 당부 기부 총을 삼을 내체 토르치네 네 기분 정기 삼을 쳐도 주고 알아 뒤지셔나야
So then continuing to the being of middle capacity, they have this sense that, well, even if I say purify all of those kinds of negativities that I've accumulated since beginningless time, and even if I abandon harming others, abandon the 10 non-virtues and engage in virtuous actions, I'm still going to have to take rebirth. So even if I do ensure a good rebirth in the future, as say a human or a god, such a rebirth is still subject to all kinds of suffering, to the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, death, the suffering of meeting with unwanted conditions and not getting what you want, the kind of suffering of unsatisfaction, and all of these sorts of sufferings that are endemic, they're inherent in taking rebirth. So one recognizes that, well, even if I am able to take rebirth as a human or a god, I'm going to have to continue in this cycle of taking rebirth, casting off that body, and then taking rebirth, sort of without any kind of autonomy, because our rebirths follow after the karma that we have accumulated. And so this sort of cycle of without any control, taking rebirth again and having to die and cast off that body and again take up another birth, this is something that is without any kind of control. And one recognizes that I want to get out of that kind of cycle and instead attain a lasting, stable, definite kind of happiness. And so here, this then involves thinking about, well, what is the cause of one taking rebirth again and again? And one recognizes that it's karma and our various afflictions. At the very root, it is this thought of I and grasping at I and mine and so forth. We have this sense that we have sort of an autonomous, a really truly existent I, that if we were to set aside all of our aggregates, our form and our consciousness and so forth, there would be this really truly like inherently existing in its own right sort of I. And then following from that, we give rise to the sense of mine. And when we have that grasping at an I and mine, we then give rise to attachment and aversion, which in turn cause us to create various kinds of karma. And due to that creation of karma, we are then propelled to take rebirth again and again. And so due to the various afflictions that arise very much from the sense of I, and then having an attachment to my side, my things, my family, separating into us and them, we then give rise to attachment and aversion towards people and towards objects and so forth. And so here at the middling level, one recognizes that, well, all beings are the same. We don't want to look at them as us and them, but all beings are the same in not wanting to suffer and wanting to have happiness. And it is the case that our attachment and aversion arising out of the sense of I are the cause that propel us to take rebirth in samsara. And so if we eliminate that cause, we can eliminate this continued rebirth and therefore can achieve this stable kind of happiness. And so it is based upon understanding that eliminating that attachment and aversion comes from recognizing their faults and then regularly working to slowly reduce our attachment and aversion, our various types of afflictions based upon the kind of wisdom realizing selflessness, the understanding understanding of impermanence, and looking at the various faults of, say, our anger, our pride, our jealousy. And over time, seeing the faults of those and working to eliminate them, we're able to eventually completely free ourselves from that kind of grasping at a self, and in turn attain liberation from samsara. So here, this is the level of contemplation of a being of middling capacity.
Oh yeah. No, she's a chakda said to young Zawadi Soso de. Some Shenja Shushambu, Nadang said to Shenja Shushambu. Didn't she Soso Koyegi? No, Saya Tonya Koya Nidula Sobata Zulia, Shenja or Chakbasura. Silent Deveris, Chakbatilia, Shugul and Num Shubanesh, Shugul Num Juni, Kagasa Mabrishora. Then the part to pay Kagan to the mirror as some local. Tende Homardo, Sosuli Nako Nimaji Shaja Duerva. Sosu Yeni Dula Soba Kande Tachimbuchina, Nimaji Kagan Dora. Saya Tonya Coela Soba Lutsovet and the court de Shabujico. They tend to tangerity, Madame Mirror Shabuchi, Sympathily Shubanashi, Shugul Num Shubanashi, teaching Shenjasira. O Tinde Makura, Chida Kamba Yore, Te Yore, Sasso Yore, Shenda Yore. Jatunguru Kalasagura, Lusoet and Dura. Or to do Shabuchi. Sosubeka do in at in the Yamdo Tangas, thing about to Koyado, some little Chabasura. The use on it, the Soso that didn't between Bada, Kaya Uted and between Bada, Mandibo Shanda, Sugar, and called the Sayangora. Toa said the Soda. The audience to go Chaba Yubati, Condo Yungordo. What in it, Napsim, Nursum, Tato, said Kanga, Mishandalchi, the Maga Chigdua. Oh, Tizu Mavso, what is what I Tizu Yortan, and Yaman Yara. Oh, Tindeta Chagna, that Tanzi, sing at the Tongbani, said Damis, Chishedua, or the Kibun Drinki Kasuko Yordo. Tongbani Koyade, Taya Medaba Koyade, Kiji Kiji Kanga, Susobo, Nanga, Dangaesi, shoot of Jagacha or Mother Nimajishayera. Naya came doa. Nanda Kangbada Kanga Shire, Nimachi Shire. Najunka sing him to Tawara sitting him to US and the Sam Kodoa. So to Liberty Shadoa. Chandra Matuyo Marto. O the Indian Cocasoda. One day, but this social lay Sambusaba, Nambasaba, Kidigi lay, but this was the same name to Roda. Drongan when they did Tirajava, take you in the road there. Matu Shenda can dream to a social simium to Samba Sambuche with a Samba Nambachib and Libertinium to do Yoda. Timato Shenda drag him to Nayadanga Shishibu Jagacha with the matter. Oh, the Chabakaze, Shenjan Yortani. Dita meeting be yellow toy, chuck down the sober, Tanzi. Or Tizu Meva so to us, some Tandanam, some Meva so too many. Or Tizu change to us, or Tizu Pangsona. And it Chagbewange le Sagmar was like Kawasa Yore, Chagbewange. Bikiwasa Yora. Oh, Nayabuchen Mother Kiwashima. Yita Tundrikan and Disamare, some Soso Shinjag, less Yora. Bikiwa Pankawa to Guru Angachima Yamaju drink Marisam Gudwa. The Chagbewange Sagor, socially Chagbewange, less Agorina Sayade, Kawara Dora. Chagbewange le Kawasa, and any Koko Kuludugara. The Condo Anglia Miguasana that is good to any Chuluduardo. Oh, yeah. Oh, the Indicable drink de Cheshekuna. You more chat down the condo than Namsim Nursum La Soba, Chado La Soba, or Tezukanga Yortangoa. Namsam Pantu Mari, Calicali Yortan, or Tezuka Redoa, Tezuyabu Medoa, somebody in a panto running your Dora. Araju Namju Tara Ranja Mezekura Shashan and Taranja Degra. O T. Aburemedoa, T. Paya Redoa, T. Kenchikdoa, Sambena, Tigetos, Yordo and Gotsura. O T. the Kibun Dringi, Shede Caresana. Daksot and Shenjo, Chomambu Messingerua, Simja Kangalia, Daksot and Shenjo Messinge. And it's Tanzida, Nada, Naes, and Shenja Shuksimbucha. Then meeting by a condo suction, or to the palm maps, or the given drink is Tarbato Curator, or did that to get the late given drink is never the Tiredua. among riches, yeah, teach them.
So here, this kind of attachment and aversion that we give rise to come from grasping at this, like first having a sense of I and then mine. And so we have a strong kind of craving, like attachment and even craving for those things that we consider to be ours. This sort of craving is likened to like say oil on paper or oil on cloth. When you get oil on paper, it's really difficult to separate that out. It's stuck in there. And so when we have this kind of craving, when we allow ourselves to give rise to a strong kind of attachment that becomes craving, it's extremely difficult to remove, like the way oil in paper is. And so when it comes to, we need certain things. We need to have a house. We need to be able to clothe ourselves and have like food to eat and tea to drink and so forth. But that's just enough to sustain ourselves is really what we need. When we give rise to a kind of extreme attachment to those objects, then we give rise to this kind of craving for them. And when something, say, obstructs our happiness or getting what we want, we give rise to anger. And when there are conditions that are conducive to getting what we want, we have this strong kind of attachment of our side and the other side. We give rise to these strong kind of afflictions, which in turn cause us to create karma. So at this point, on the being of middling capacity, they are beginning to investigate selflessness, subtle selflessness and emptiness, and subtle impermanence as well, recognizing that nothing can be taken with us. Even the sort of things that we are attached to, that we crave for, that we really want, and we think of as ours, we can't bring them with us. Nothing sort of physical, none of our family or friends, and even our body that really feels like so stably, solidly ours, it can't be taken with us. These are all things that are impermanent, changing moment to moment. But really, the only things that continue with us are good and bad karma. Nothing else will continue. So the sort of force of our good and our bad thoughts is what continues on into our future life. Now, here, although one might want to sort of instantly get rid of all of the kind of craving, the attachment and aversion that arrives from this grasping at a self, this is not something that we can do instantly, but rather we can work on reducing this kind of craving and attachment, as well as aversion to the side of the other. And so with that, again, if when we're accumulating virtue or non-virtue, say when we're accumulating virtues to take a good rebirth in the future, we're doing that out of attachment. And so that can be kind of a good thing in that we gain a good rebirth in the future, or we can be doing, say, negative actions out of attachment and take a bad rebirth. But recognizing here on this middling level that all of the kinds of karma that we create is leading to future rebirth, one is trying to eventually reduce and ultimately eliminate all of those kinds of afflictions and the root of those afflictions. So if we're able to reduce our kind of anger and our jealousy, our craving, our malice, and so forth, this is going to lead us to eventually being able to eliminate them completely. If we just leave those sort of attitudes as they are, not addressing them in any way or not making any kind of effort to reduce them, then they're just going to continue just as they are. And so here, having this kind of strong sense of a side of the self or ours and then other leads us to have strong attachment to our side, my things, my friends, and kind of craving for them, as well as aversion toward the other. And so long as we have that strongly, we're going to continue in this cycle of samsara. So thus at the level of the middling, the being a middling capacity, one is striving to reduce that and eventually eliminate that altogether.
Oh yeah, I give you chimbe. That's a to shoot it. Take back chimbe, change chimbe, take back chimbe. Oh, data delay, than the given drink is some little say torn. Give drink capsule, run, coed, to mail it to Tabach, some so. Oh, that's some little, oh, Rachibu, coed, to mail it to Tarba Samlutana, Marumba Resa, so send Padam Mata Nini Dula Soba, Randy, and it Putula Soba, Sazala Soba, that only at Sendil cutting Simba and the Kabuchas of the Chang Matanja. 동해지 저 통마매거나 단다 동해나 마오바나 동해나리 랑다 치버리 저소를 삼을지에 마다 소수 치부야 동해를 탄나 삼나 말아브레 삼제 천디 파마가 쳔베로아 저니 저조야 동해를 타고 치고 그래 삼 아니 다 천디 파마 치부 말에 교황아 말라티나시 요래 띵아 말라티나시 띵아 말티나시잖아 심지어 망쳐 마주바 마마주바 니도 마주바 조구 마주바 조무 마주바를 써봐라 매버리시대 정말 나를 거기 침부쳐야 돼가지고 땡겨야 말와 어디 도전 심지어 강가 파다 마다 니들라 써봐 신들이야 약부지 소소 가부지서 심지어 컨디션 텐데 마주바 심지어 요 말에 삼고라 어디선자 대저 정말 라나시 동해지 나와 다더래 저쪽 강가 동행에 타고 탑시치 통계시 제고래 삼겨라 전대 삼르다네 심제 탐제기 파다 말라 소바니 니도 심바시네 저쪽 정말 동해에 tra와시 다가 제고래 좋아 다 대자 말이야 삼루션다지 til로 자체다네 다 대완들라 동해 면도 바래 소소 강에 강가 파세고도 와 대화 강가 줍고도 와 근데 다른 아주 나서 두자 나서 고베시 가서지 어디 나도 소시부 타는 삼금에도 이 강가 때문에 그래 삼 콘주대 나서대 매서서 콘주에 나라 나절에 타고 나시 미션다 타고래 미션다 마다는 야 나용 그래도 어떤데 삼려서 제제라 소소리야 팬 톡보다 마톡보다 삼로 당겨 말해 알아서 참상을 요래 이든데 강에 여버리 통선나 건강이만 팬 톡보다 내비게보다 진짜 삼로게 땅 말와 그 강에 누서 로버츠 우리 이제 삼제 로버츠 삼로 시도가 어디나시 티 삼로디야 야게 당겨라 심지어 참만 알아내시 대완들라 대화 컨디션에 거를 통해 컨디 참무치나 면도 장자래삼 땅하나 심지어 참무 찍바래삼 소화된 것이 어래삼 땅에 랑이 통해서 강에 대화 툭툭에 내가 지어봤나시 콘솔에 간 툭툭이 통해서로 제 대화 툭으로 제고래삼 심지어 참만 탐제 로봇 제고야래샤삼 다 단당에 제토에 요 말에 단다 제토에 요 말왕 아주 근데 삼버를 마도 아이네 근데 제통게도 가래 라케 근세 연대 근데 산제지 고바 톰네 방도르제네 상모탐지시 상부 타르치 시럽 타르치 언니바 용수 사바지 송소나 아니 샤리아 칼라 간데기 쳬테 발라 소바 탑시 강가 용수 소바 네바 쳔베코네 쳬토그와 티치도자코 가 산제지 고바 토바 차고 상구라 심지어 탐제 동에도 트라버 차베시도 근데 제 통경게 근근세 연대 근데기 산제지 고바 나라주 남주 낭미르지 강에 유나 교보시다는 땅에 롭종 야부지 제제 낭미도저 강에 세다 대화토에 세고 삼 롭종 야부지야 도와 롭종 야부지 네바 야부튼 손에 낭미기 강에 세다 대화토에 강가 연구도 와 어디나 시삼을 당겨와래 심지어 탐제 동에 세다 대화토에 네바 요소 송경기 연대 연계 상부 타르침바 심지어니 개바시에 매바 라레 개쳐와치와 와 니시럽 랑도르진네 가르때구나 대화용의 교과래 동해용의 교과래 가르가르 공부를 강가시행게 산제지 고반 교육군세 심지어 탐제 동해대 tra와다 대화랑 그 통경게 네바 용수 속백권에 내가 제 통경게 산제지 고반 지치네지 토바르샤섬 디키부치 베셈로와 들리하더니 심지어 탐제 돈도 산제지 고반 토바차기 삼제 니리니리 메세 나리아 심지어를 잠바다 자와다 닝지다 저와니 녀모다 미시바 몽보세야 안 시제네 주셔야 된다 배수세 깨와네 베네 타르투네 타르침바 지치기 상고라 산제지 고만 토바르차섬 들이하니 장주 삼바시기도 기부침비셔시거라 들이 당한주 기와침마 펜지 최주세데 최당부도 좀 나다 바르바데 tumnanda chembudu tumnanda otu panch tuwe samru tangodo ti tanda rang kanga to togu marwa ina shala migo chupa kewa chutuwe de togu rama chamado ti mado ke yo marwa yirin mesinale 어디 인데 또저 강가랑게 톱그레 삼고래 말아서 강가 산제지 리유셔라 산제 좀된데 산제버에 티나싱가라솔에 네가 요아래 말아서 텐데 요에 매우지나니 제가 요 말아 텐데 말은 말아서 셈디 빼삐다고 요라 셈디 야고체는 빼야고체 토고요라 셈상으로 삼다 윤대셔 셔다 요라 상제게 봐도 셈빼 나모단 차도다 에시에메게 강가신게 텐데 차기요라 산제지 리유셔라 산제 유레게 리디 산제 좀 된데 산제 신주레 공게 셈디랑 알아주 셈 땅부 셈 개박게 요 말에 셈디 딱바리스 콘도세 딱바리지 나게 요 차도에 버시 대고에 요 말에 참상을 연구로 와 매부손에 소야 요로 고니모 견도서 파 세기세 와 연대야 저거 요로 와 제순장 알아주 근데 제톱 그래서 단도 남사 제 맞도네 저와 깔래 때문에 제톱 그래 나래 산제지 리유 삼고라 셈비랑신 외사와 주만남 루보로 하셔라 셈비랑신데 고 세베랑신치레 마도 코르당아 예단 차도다 시단데 또 딱바리 수요 대해서 말해 참상라니 소소 박자한테 차기어라 가간도야요라 추레지냐 고 추랑시 땅마로 와 참상라니 욕제 진욕도 차기어도 남괴랑시 땅마래 이나 참자 timba코네 근데 샤요도 딜루보로 하래 tentu teesi marido oti sunza ranzule sanje jiri yore sam tende che tupgire sam o te sam gu yora o tende samne chö ganga de nami jin debu so de kya chima nyoe to dale sam gu to ina de la len ta na chen de le pengre chen de ya so so la le ta go ro shan le chawa pa mi lu nga yo sun ko ne chawa pa jini pamba du de samba sambu cha gri tsana so so ki bo yora 낭미 tumba 용그래 미션다도 tumba 용그래 콘도 총도래 차도 총도래 가게 총도래 내 메시지 기부차그라 내 다다 신심제 강가 찍버리 삼나 차다다 지 콘도 사야도 저도 매라 소소소소 심디 갈소라 신들이 끼워요래 소소 담배 쉬어도 담부 신들이야 신디 된달에 조지기요 말데 이나고 쉬어디 제베네 신들이야 소소 끼봐 낭미 끼봐 sabab kongura, chambab kongura, nyingsi kongura, mitabab komna tanto teya yomar kagandogura, tanda desiringile yaku chegure, dewa yongure, tunge mangure, nge chone kondil tunge tene digmare, dewa dugure samgura, nimajini kagandoyara, so che chone doshagra, tebe ringtilia yangbuchi, mitabab samle tandu, tira tentu teya yomar da teziringa yaguchi teyese gyora madu shinaku yomare kiran chigiri dasi shinaku yomare chiwa soba midagbarwa dagbari sunji nyamdo teya yomara tanda yebe ringdile chamba tsawa chigi chilu kondu maji chadwa maji tunge maji yaguchi teyese gyorno di nashi simje shindale pa gyakeje changmali ya naba maji tumbashi tindi teya lapsi kyagdwa 근데 저는 소소 쳇들에 소소 대화대 인바라 쳇들에 최전에 손남 사소나 손남 dembe mi samba nam jakrushara 쳇데 tonda ruguare 쳇들에 소소리 도거리지 주나 아다 용거를 코알이야 근데 영화 요래 토마 매반에 심제 가가를 내다 님뭐 겨알랑 서두까지 단데 까지 타면데 가가 영화 요래 삼아도 Tubure chotang alati chunsu sam zabulin suchil maju sosuli chunsam sosul samdeche tagbari tisheje samutade do tinde mewa chagra kowe chunyi re sam tinde le nyumungu shangwadu tuni kyawalang chinje tila samsan yaga samsan duga kari ne yongji yore kowe chunyi re sam kowe le tendo tawachi majung bato tisu teju re sam na soy tubgidwa tinde hindi tangi tanda kari shewasana 기부 총은 진 쳔베 최 가르쳐 통달하라 소소 제고도 대교원 대부대 소 교와 치마 편제 연구에 시지래도 아까랬겠네 이나 남이진 대부다 텐데 대부 쫓아와대 이나 단다체 들이야 뱅기 와라 쳔디 된달에 최시해봐 말이대 최시해봐야나 고 쳔디래 야소소 대화다 남미다 상마 잠바세가 거네 뱅기도 와 뒤지 남나 그래 어디 손자 텐데 산제지 고반 토버샤 야 기부 총어 기부 등 기부 쳔베 공부하던 게 림지 토버샤이 Teacher do net as Sanjay Kovan Topjig Che, Tarwa Topjig Che, Kibun Dringi Che Tene, Padami, Jawa Sambu Topjig Che La Soba, Tezunier, Tele Tebache, Tele Samluta, Telalene Chini Kanu, Lalene Tartoba Chene, should the Chigi Insam, Sanjay Kovan Toba Chigi Insam, Teacher do Tambechi Yagi Insam Kulu. Samratana is Chenyangura, or teachers on Tender, Manduchas, yeah.
So then we get to the kind of being of great capacity, this what we call the great vehicle, the Mahayana, the Bodhisattva vehicle. And so here, the being of middling capacity is thinking about getting this kind of lasting, stable happiness, of freedom from taking rebirth due to the karma and the afflictions. And on this next level, the being of great capacity, one recognizes that's not okay. That's not right to just strive for my own happiness alone, while my sort of fellow beings here continue to suffer. This isn't suitable to just strive for my own freedom when I can see that all other beings, my mother, father, all of these beings that we are close to, our friends, our family, and so forth, and all beings beyond that, are also tormented by this kind of suffering. And when we begin to expand thinking beyond just this life, we recognize that, again, there's not a single being who hasn't shown me incredible kindness in a past life. There isn't a single being who hasn't been my mother, my father, my best friend, my family, and so forth. And all of these beings are tormented by the kinds of sufferings that I am tormented by as well. And so looking at all of these beings who have acted with such great kindness towards us, and we also not only recognize their kindness, but recognize that fundamentally, every single being is just the same as we are, and wanting to have happiness and not wanting to suffer in any way. And so we look at this kind of situation and we recognize that, well, it's really about not just my own liberation, but being able to free all of these other sentient beings from this kind of situation. So sort of giving rise to this kind of attitude of not just wanting something for one's own benefit, but really recognizing that for the benefit of the other being, you want this to come about. This is dependent upon recognizing that everybody is just like me. So like we could think about our sort of situation here with COVID, recognizing that nobody wants to have to deal with that it's in all of our benefit to get rid of this kind of disease. None of us wants to have this situation. And so it's not just about our sort of individual feelings, but recognizing that all sentient beings are similar to us, or they're like that. They're like us, and wanting to, in that way, help them. But when it comes to the situation of samsara, being born due to karma and the afflictions, we're not really in a situation to be able to fully help other sentient beings. But when we look, well, who is able to benefit beings in this way? It's someone who has attained this state of Buddhahood, who has eliminated all faults and attained all good qualities, and knows all of the points of practice without any sort of error, what it is that we should take up into practice and what it is that we should abandon, what it is that we should avoid. This state of Buddhahood is endowed with this great kind of ability, this power to be able to benefit other sentient beings through teaching them what it is that we should adopt and what it is that we should abandon. And so we should think that, well, if I do actually study and learn these things, I am able to eventually get to that state of Buddhahood. So we should, and at this point of the being of great capacity, someone who is striving in the Mahayana, be holding others as more important than ourselves. And so this is kind of recognizing that, again, we don't have the current sort of capacity to be able to benefit beings fully, but we have the ability to develop this. And so this is the mind that we want to generate when we get to the state of the being of great capacity, of thinking that, well, I'm going to, as much as I am able to, develop love and compassion, this kind of recognizing that I don't have this capacity currently, but I'm going to, lifetime after lifetime, through eons and eons months of practice, however long it takes to achieve Buddhahood, I'm going to practice these kinds of trainings in order to develop that state, in order to get to that state. So we should be thinking about this in our day-to-day life, how it is that we can incorporate all of these kinds of teachings. We go in stages, the being of small, middling, and great capacity, but we should try to take up into practice however much we are able to at the current time. So we should also recognize that we have the ability to accomplish this. We have the ability to work with our mind and actually transform, become a Buddha. And this is based upon recognizing that we all have this Buddha lineage, this fundamental, like we call it different things, but this sort of seed of Buddhahood within us. Our mind has the capacity such that it is able to develop and change. Our minds right now are no different from the mind of a Buddha before he attained enlightenment. We are able to, through the development of our mind, through working with our mind, we can get to that state of Buddhahood. We should have a kind of confidence in this ability based upon understanding that we have this nature of this Buddha nature. So as it is said, the nature of mind is clear light. The stains are adventitious. So the stains in our mind, the kind of afflictions that we have, like pride and jealousy and all of those, anger and attachment, are things that can be separated out. They're not actually art of the nature of mind. It's like water. If you have mud or some sort of pollutant within water, it seems like that water is totally made impure, but those impurities are able to be removed. They aren't in the nature of that water. So here, this is what we should recognize, is that we have that potential, that ability, and therefore we should be, when we are engaged in Dharma, we're thinking about sort of at the least our next life, but we're thinking about that kind of long-term goal of Buddhahood. And here, when we have this recognition that our mind has the capacity to change, and we're sort of working with that goal of gaining a good rebirth in the future, or the goal of liberation, or the goal of Buddhahood for the benefit of all, we should recognize that those actions that we take with that kind of future mindset are also going to bring about benefit in this life. If we reduce things like our anger and our jealousy, our attachment, our malice, and so forth, we're going to have a happier, better life right now. We're going to have better relationships, more harmonious relationships with our family and friends, and so forth. If we contemplate things like impermanence and recognizing that nothing is going to last and remain, then we're able to deal better with the sense of loss, the impending death, the death that we have to face. So it's not only that these kinds of practices are going to bring about ripening fruits in the future, but they're going to bring about benefits to this life right now. So this kind of practice of Dharma allows us to sort of recognize, when we say meet with bad conditions, recognize that these are impermanent, that this is the nature of samsara. Or if we sort of are encountering negative circumstances and situations, we recognize that anything that comes about due to karma and the inflictions, anything that's within samsara, is in the nature of suffering. So this is the way in which we practice. We try to do day to day things like reducing our various afflictions and contemplating impermanence and developing love and compassion and so forth, with a goal that is beyond this life. But we are doing this in a way that will benefit us in this life as well. And so here, for the sake of being able to attain Buddhahood, we should think that I'm going to do all of these kinds of practices in stages, in accordance with my capacity and what I am able to do right now. And for that purpose, for that eventually being able to attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings, I'm going to listen to this Dharma. I'm going to contemplate it and think about it. And as much as I am able to, I'm going to put it into practice. And in this way, we should set a motivation of bodhicitta for listening to these teachings.
Oh, yeah, 당연 저 그신 내가 친철대 양자지 세고라 결세스도 다 망보를 친도 망보 친등에 되네마 그신 친철대 양자 도스토스 마셔셔나
No.
그신 친철은 가지고 거기 되네마 해봐 땐도 매지 송도 매봐셔야 돼 땐도 매지 송도 매라 수제 마임바 가임바 대응어니 진대시나스 파바 군조제 관리해서 농지 장소아 그신 고쳐야 돼 Oh, that in my Karishak Dosan and D. Tade Shebe, Shechig long the Trangadua, Kunjo Sekbag long Trangadua. Karishak Sim de Chena, don't number Chena, don't number Rangune Tubani, Yomarwa. No, Timmy was on the same day too much some sinner do the Kunzup Sumbatam Rese. Now Nashim Beba, Aranzu Tonju Nashitali Yomarese. Kumadiko, Tata Langbola Soba Trina, Mazu Talang Tongri, Talang or to Gumardo, or Tinashe. Same day, don't Tambariona, Mazu Tonashe, don't Tambariona, Sana near Yokorati or Mares. Nikumacham to Mimi Bar Tamba Shera. No, you got it. She should take to the long day. Papa Kunjo Segwand, she should take to. Oh, too much of the Kunjusam to Tubadese. The Shichi Tankdua. Tendo Major, Sondo Mela, she said. Tinema Anche. Tidara Tadarjua Maeno, Shijung Ose. Oh, Dinamache, and Dinama Karishak Dosana. Cash sim the Tantamba Maduna, te Cash. Nation that Tagwadan Bedabadan, Debada Mount Bolasobatezo, Tantamba Tugumarua, Niba de Tankdua. Cash sim being all Tantamba Metona. The Kavar Simbi Debada Mahobada, oh, Tunde La Soba, Kavadanga, Walla Soba, Tandamba Tuguma, Resti Shekdoa. Oh, Casada. Tama di Longitu, in the name of regret to be Sunday Shekdoa. Tedartana, Simbing, O Yanda Baches on Metongos, Tamaya Yanda Baches on Metongos, Tambo Kavada, Tamaji Bala Soba, Pardon, Nebala Soba Kanga, Tuguma Resti Shekdoa. Tichi Lamna, ya.
So today, then going to the text, we will do a little bit of review. Last time we had gone through quite a bit, and so we'll go back just a little bit and look at some of the things that we went through. So here, this going back to this the heap of Jules Arya Sutra. So here this actually goes back a little bit before, looking at the sort of sense that first we were looking at the fact that the mind doesn't have any sort of ultimate or real true existence, and so phenomena like the sort of things that are the objects of mind don't have any sort of real or inherent existence, and then the mind that perceives those as well, it doesn't have any sort of real true existence. So this then yeah, so yeah, no.
Oh, yeah, teacher. Children mimic with two dancing the Suda, children did not number two mares. Dancing any day, casual carina, don't number two mares, think to a tadic bonus. Take a net think to Sina. They talk about simply number two bangoni, solar sobangoni, Jayanta Bacheso Betongo. The direct syrup, the chutam judging only Yanta Bacheso, Matonga Su Tagoshe, Medabashela, Sobatachi Baritua. Oh, Tezu, I think to number two mares, Tishegdoa. Oh, teacher Lana.
So yeah, they here then so this is sorry, I don't have page numbers on this, but here going back to just after the quotation from the heap of Jules Arya Sutra, then so when we say that the beginning of the mind is not ultimately seen, the end of the mind is not ultimately seen, and the middle of the mind is not ultimately seen. So here, when what is thoroughly realized by the mind too is realized as being empty. So we have that the mind is established as being empty. That which is realized by the mind is established as being empty. And then by realizing that, the very identity which is established as the aspect of of mind, like the identity of physical form and so forth, is ultimately not perceived. In this way, when the person does not ultimately see the identity of all phenomena through wisdom, he will not analyze the various sort of characteristics. So whether physical form is permanent or impermanent, empty or not empty, contaminated or non-contaminated, and so forth. So when the object does not exist, its characteristics also cannot exist.
Oh yeah, that didn't mind the how don't get you social trip and never think to how don't get chabache, don't number too much to chabache, and the same net under the Shine group channel, how don't to give her. She loves some drinking to give her. So how don't get you social trip and never social chabal attendant, then it don't bunny shit to be raised, it never shake door. They didn't my shake door, they, that syrup the number chat, and over kangi nazurbe. Obo kangi ngoni to number never means but say number meto betting in Zealand Juko se. Cheba chene, how don't cheba chene, don't when you lola shasuna, ne ashine con the telene would ese. Certain judging only mebanija, doso, so tea shake doa. How don't you a sausage and never think it to till of Nigeria, yeah.
So here, then, this is describing the way in which the kind of sort of ability comes forth from this analysis of insight. So here, this is kind of, again, it's described that one needs to engage in this kind of analysis in order to be able to come to this realization, or sort of this sort of ability that comes through insight. Whereas just developing mental stabilization alone, or concentration alone, is not sufficient to be able to do this.
Oh yeah. Tandinema yila mesheba some you come back to the tanda Hashangin Dova. Kaya yila masheba setena, Nelu Kore, and then Yamola Sabon don't do race yora, or Dimares Shedo, yila mesheba some. And then Nelu Tadu Kombada, and then Namdon don't draw at to take my race, the shagdoa. The Kanesha can shit up the moving on your social tane. Megum Jes, Yela Sheba Yoso, Pons and Bashi Combat Shigres, Koran de Bashegdoa. They take my rest in a number talk by Namian Mendoce, Seti Ngoni talk by a Minjurte, Namdon Dotu Mare, Nelu Totu Mares, Caresne. Shirab the now maybe Cherose. Shirab the Taxation, Sheba Machine, Shirab the now Saba, Chitoya Keomarto, Mishiba Momba says she got a Tendeke Omara. Can you yell my Jebsity Yorto or teaching?
So here, then we have a kind of refutation of this view that the mere elimination of mental activity it could somehow lead to liberation. So it says here, those who do not meditate with wisdom by analyzing the entity of things specifically, but merely meditate on the elimination of mental activity, cannot avert conceptual thoughts, and also cannot realize identitylessness because they lack the light of wisdom. So here, this is those who would say that it's in order to develop this kind of proper wisdom, one just needs to eliminate mental activity. This is the refutation of that, saying that no, it's necessary to use the kind of an analytical power, this illumination of wisdom, in order to come to a correct understanding.
Oh yeah, Tandinema Tanda, Chia Yila Majena, and Namdo said to Mara, you never talk to Mara Sherwa. That Ranlugi, Ranjogi, Shiji, Soso Togwale, number Metobe made in Zigi Namdo, number Tobe, Bishin say to Gurese. Ranchos, Ranlu, Kamalashila, Ranluki, and Soso Tog Shirab the Cheba Chebalatani, don't when you talk to Gure. Anything less of a number talk with the Pushinashi, may sing seven as a sect to good as the shake door. Ranjogi says, so talk about it, number may talk with Metige, Tinzing Namdo, Tipushin the sector with us, Neluta do talk with us to shake door. Did the Yanda was also talk by Nile? Yanda was Jita was into Shebe Mejona, so she to bash into talk with Shin Seko, said some day they catch it, and they said, our consulting like a catch it, or Tibotachilla.
So here then the response by our own system is that here those sort of that would assert that this just stopping of mental activity allows us to have an understanding of the way that things are. That's not correct, but rather that one needs to engage in this kind of analysis in order to eventually be able to develop the non-conceptual kind of wisdom that realizes emptiness directly. So here it says, if the fire of consciousness, knowing phenomena as they are, is produced from individual analysis of suchness, then, like the fire produced by rubbing wood, it will burn the wood of conceptual thought. So the Buddha has spoken in this way. So it is possible through, instead of eliminating conceptuality altogether, as those proponents of Hashang would assert, in the system of Kamalashila, one is able to eventually sort of burn away all conceptual thought by actually developing this wisdom of individual analysis of suchness.
Oh, yeah, to Nicola do so. How don't be you make your order into Rancho Geshe. Oh, the Tata. Tintiswa. Oh, yeah, Kunjo Tingi. Oh, the Kunjo Tingi Dollar Hautongi. Juba Kiabata, Tatan de Lungi Tangitoa. Papa Kunjo Tingi Dollar Kacheba. That can like KBS. They travel Tamjet, that Tower Chavez, Tombani Comba, Nanjurdo Cheto, Tombani Comba, Mawe, Yula Neba, you Kora, Temba Madruba, you Temba Druba Tonga, Sheba Temba Madruba, Sheba Temba Madruba Tonga, Sheba Day and Temba Madruba Tobala Soba, or Dishegdoa. Kunjo drinking do del Haldongi, Juba Jaber Temba Yinsigdoa, Papa Kunjo drinking Longi Tandoa, or Tiggy. How don't be when the Sheba said in Jubati, Gaber Sheba in Songua. Yeah.
So here, then, quoting from the Cloud of Jewels Arya Sutra here, in order to back up this idea, again, that it is through this wisdom of individual analysis or individual analysis of suchness that one can actually produce this realization free of conceptual thought. It says, one skilled in discerning the fault engages in the yoga of meditation of emptiness in order to get rid of conceptual elaborations. So when such a person, due to his repeated meditation on emptiness, when he thoroughly searches for the object and the identity of the object, which delights the mind and distracts it, he realizes them to be empty. So here it is through this kind of a process of meditating on emptiness, through trying to find and not finding the identity of the object, which leads one to be able to get rid of eventually all conceptual elaboration.
Oh, yeah, Tandi, Papa Suna Rambuche, Papa Suna Rambuche lost of Tembashino Seti or the Dua. What the Karishek dosana. How don't get Tomartene. Jim did make well at Turku, Tombani talk well how don't come to Tambo, Jim just subsociation, and it Tombani sometimes a team make well pa Shago race, Tishek to how don't come to Suteliani, Jim did you go race, Tambo, Toma, Jim did you subsociation joke race. The dark answer that Chola Dameba, a tar decona le Subayons Tower shower, shame maybe so what in a Tishek to. How don't come to Toma, Jim did you bear? Big Ball send me a butcher Turku race, Tishek to. That's why.
Yeah.
Election and Papa Tuna and Bushy. so le temba shinu stiwo de kansa dan chula dameba tar dameba te kona tar shukba de yonsa tabar shawa da tabar shawa shemebe tokba dan chuba dan sheshinduge
No.
어디다 저 활동 공부 수들 망부 예배나네 점디 mikbala sem te ko resti shek do sene digra.
So here, then, following this on the next page, where it says, this is as stated in the Space Treasure Arya Sutra and the Jewel Crown Arya Sutra and so forth. So here it says, in this way, by entering into the suchness of the selflessness of persons and phenomena, you are free from concepts and analysis because there is nothing to be thoroughly examined and observed. You are free. So here, this is sort of talking about the way in which one develops this kind of practice of insight and the way in which one continues to sort of deepen and develop this process.
Oh yeah, that mikba mature zimba shidwa. The guntu je ne mikba de pa malagba che yanga guntu ni zingurus mikba mature su yu ma sha che guntu ni zing tabshi che ures ladon kum du sans de shedwa. Mikba de mature che guntu ni ti che ures. That the chunju chi madam medwa. There ne simbi gun number me wa shebar chao shedwa. There ne simbi gun number me war chao shedra. Oh, dig in the case of the mikba machoa che yabuche guntu ni zingures. To do doa.
No.
Chunju chi mato yo mare.
No.
Lene simbi gun number me war chao shedwa.
No.
저기 동반이 신도 세부 심리 차주 근데 terνene 심지 균데 현단 마에 배치제 균투딘 주고 레스티 셰도
No.
이도
Here, so then the sort of it's explaining that we should first have like a strong sort of focus when one is first beginning to meditate on selflessness of persons and phenomena. And so it says here that one enters into this kind of meditation and you very clearly meditate on suchness and abide in it. So again, this is like one should have kind of a tight sort of focus on the object of suchness. And then one should, as it says here, while abiding in that meditation, the continuity of the mind should not be distracted. So again, we're striving to develop this kind of continuity of mind, wherein the mind, which is realizing the suchness of phenomena, is not suchness is not distracted away. We're trying to continue and sort of increase the continuity of that realization.
뭐야 다들 엄마들 뒤에 가셔라 미바 쇼나 라야 때 봐시도 들 미바 쇼나 라야 좀 봐셔 봐 미바 쇼나 라야 좀 봐셔 돼 셰거도 되게 가서르스네 강게 제 발갑순데 살아서 sembi sem number 1 소나 봐 대하고 하셔제 뉴토네 수 뉴토 미독 발라서 봐 콤베 미독 발라서 봐 콤네 양양 야티 간수 mikbala shagures shegdo mikba shorna sim mikba mebache ko be wangi shenda tende pha sim drosona larian telia sim te ko res ti shegdo dange se parkap sun de sala so be sim chirito number yen wa te se number yen wa sor chene nyudo miduk ba kombala so ba shiwar chene nyudo ne ti mikbala sim jogo res ido
No.
Oh, yeah.
So here, then one while abiding in this meditation on suchness, the continuity of the mind should not be distracted. So when the mind is distracted to external objects due to attachment and so forth, such distraction should be noted, or really the mind should be pulled back and placed back on the object of meditation. And so it says, quickly pacify the distraction by meditating on the repulsive aspect of such objects, and swiftly replace the mind on suchness. Here, this again is when one is actually engaged in this kind of meditation. One, if you're aware that you're becoming distracted and so forth, pull the mind back from those kinds of distractions and place it again on the proper object, the object of suchness in this case.
Oh yeah, and it tembe tuke ba sigdwa. Sem tembo che ko never cher tangore se tembe tuke ba tembo che tuke ba never cher tangore se te sigdwa. Tembe tuke ba se gange che dela sem ngomba mekawa tonga te se tingji kombola metro a chwa te sora tingji ji yenden tonne ngomba kawe kombar cha ose. Ki yangja to neba ya ke se ne kongorese temba tuke bas tembo che komye tuti yangja tingji kombola tro meba chasuna yangja tro yombo che neba ya chir tangores ti shegdo namba yewa tongar che ne kawa de soe yawan dogba se sempa yen sona yangja ne yawan den do ne tingji komba tuti ya chir tande namane she komgore segdo number yewa nyawara towe jam misewara shiwara chawo se mekawa rab de shiwara chawo o jejulamna ben digri yana tiwo de chingwa dogba se shiduwe
No, chingwa dogba de
chide mukba dan ni ji nende kyo misewe jingam jindu dogba tonwa de che gongma shindu chodo kawe ngobo yele sheba nyudu chingwa shiwara cha la shesduga o tilamna digre ti chingwa dogbe tab shegdwa ti chilamna chingwa dogbe tab agi tama di yushana digre
No. So here, then this is kind of giving us instructions on how to increase the sort of power of this kind of insight meditation. So again, when one is getting distracted away, one should quickly place the mind back on suchness. If one's getting distracted away by sort of objects of attachment, and meditate on repulsion and so forth. Here, if one appears to be disinclined to do that, if you're not feeling sort of like you want to do the single pointed meditation on suchness, then one should reflect on the advantages of that kind of practice and meditate with delight. And so the disinclination should be pacified by also seeing the defects of distraction. And so then when one has a kind of is overcome by lethargy or sort of sinking, if the function of the mind becomes unclear and starts sinking, or when there is a risk of it sinking due to being overpowered by lethargy or sleep, then, as before, quickly attempt to overcome such dullness by focusing the mind on supremely delightful things. So again, this is dealing with how to sort of pacify or deal with the various kinds of faults or defects that can arise when one is trying to engage in this sort of meditation.
Oh, degra. Ta chingwa sewa se de shegdo de wo do koba se de shegdo. Koba sewa se chidi kange se mo ta da che bala so wa temba asre. Mo shen da da che mo che bala so wa tende ten so na shegdo. Mi koba ba chagwe wang ge ting ji. Mi bale shen du go ra. O ti de ni koba se be tab che wo de song do.
So then below that, so we have this sort of methods for dealing with or averting our kind of dullness and lethargy. And then below, it says here that the object of suchness should be held in very tight focus. And then we turn to at times when the mind is observed to be excited or tempted to become distracted by the memory of past events, of laughter and play, then, as in the earlier cases, pacify the distraction by reflecting on such things as impermanence and so forth, which will help to subdue the mind. So here, when we are under the control of excitement, we can have this sort of general distraction, but again, excitement is usually things that we are attached to, have a kind of desire for. So when our mind is distracted to those things, we should pacify them using reflection on impermanence and so forth.
Oh yeah, that is that didn't matter. 22 bar jugba set is lamna 22 bar jugba. That thing is a comnisha. Chiwada Kuba, Tendewando Madone, by Yabuja Tingzilla, Shila Sondilla Nedis and Sigata, 22 bar jugba said. Take also those city can't say Chiwada Kuba, that Trevor, you are number shoot this. Chingu that Trene, Chingu maybe Chanyamber shoot, but they say, I think it's a thing to go. They say, can't get Juba Joa. They say, so I learn Chima Yongudo, Kuba Yongudo, Tendeg, Bazuma Chevche, Danium Shago, Residua. 22 bar Jubase. This way. Can't get Chimada, Kuba, Trevor Journey. Number shoot it, take on annual sem ranking, Nagin Juba Joa, they say, so I learned the Danium Socha said. 22 bar Jubas. Things you learn, you don't think I wasn't to do it. I ran a shower. They are, she wanted to cover your my taxi show my resum.
So then we have the next point, which is if and when the mind spontaneously engages in meditation on suchness, free of any kind of dullness or excitement or here sinking or mental agitation, it should be left naturally and your efforts should be relaxed. So again, if one is able to like spontaneously and effortlessly spontaneously engage in this meditation on suchness, and one doesn't have any kind of sinking or agitation, there's no sort of dullness or excitement coming up, then one should relax the kind of effort and allow it to remain in that state without overly applying sort of effort to apply an antidote when one is not needed.
동반이 제바제 semne 냠도 실라 송디도 공부하다 송돈데와 공발라 미냠베 녀바스도 제바 체자나 아니야 땡은지 네바데 신내 셰 총장 땡은 제바 제공디 쇼체자나 아니 마음에 롱그나리 샤바나 시르 그래서 와 야 땡은지 장장을 내 체자나 제바제 동반이데 쇼첨부 연구 말해서 tenye chanyamji chegorese chebada neyanyi budi chanyamba juguri chik chanja shewa chene kyerese ne niga tingejila nesimbe ngane cheba chede niga chanyamba juguru na ni shila sungri tingeji yabo tukugures ti shegdoa sungri kombala minyambe nyebase de kawashi rusa kange che lagdo kombe shirab shindu shewar gurwa tese shirab shetan Hadon de Cheba de Shuk Chedana, Shine Chue, Mami Lung Shagba Shindu, Semio Arguroso, or Dine Mati Shegdoa. Did you lamna, Rasunga?
Yeah, Russell. So here, then it's giving us advice about how to first develop this kind of serenity meditation. And then once we've achieved serenity, we engage in the meditation on insight. And then we need to have a unification of method and wisdom, of serenity and insight. And so here, these need to be together. If we're doing too much on the side of, say, just serenity meditation, meditation, we lose the kind of the sort of penetrative insight, the depth of understanding with regard to emptiness. And if we are too strong on the analysis and the insight, then we lose the kind of clarity that comes, or the stability that comes from the serenity side. So it says here, when by meditating on insight, excessive wisdom is generated and serenity is weak, the mind will waver like a butter lamp in the wind, and you will not perceive suchness very clearly. So we need to have a sort of a conjoined practice of serenity and insight. If one is too strong without the other, it will become a faulty kind of a meditation. So one needs to have this sort of analysis side, but also within the context of this kind of stability that is brought about by the development of serenity. So one definitely needs to have both of these working together in order for it to be successful. So here we turn to the kind of unifying method and wisdom.
Oh yeah. I do. Number combat number that shine da ladoniga chanyambo je komgore segdo. Shine she chetana digmaro ladon she chana digmarese. Niga chanyambo che niga chochido. Number ne to be segure segdo. Number combat ambashe. They can take that teach da. Kangi se niga nyamdun jukba se jukbe se ludan semla neba ma juji pato ngomban duchi meba never chawos ne lusim kala maga pato ni niga nyambo se juto ne tingali ne se te gore sungudo o dilamna indu chire.
So then we turn again to the text where it says that when both are equally engaged, when we have equally serenity and insight, it says, keep still effortlessly so long as there is no physical or mental discomfort. So when one is engaged in this meditation, having this sort of balance between insight and wisdom should remain in that so long as there is no kind of mental or physical discomfort.
Oh yeah, then never say taps figura. The Lula sober never cuna take up so Jite Tata Cumada Rami to the Melam Dachi Mayula Sobta. The Lula sober never Junase, Tingy Comchetanet, and Lula similar color de Chonsona. Never say ne, Nesukab Gresera, Nesukab Tap the Caresana, Shetamje now and I see maybe Cumata with Melam Tabu in Batanroa. Oh, and the Chambada Ninji Chanju similar sober. Some just Chandaga Tombani, the Shaggy Nation didn't did up condition or mother. The machine Bewanga and last time the Quack or some chair. Not and that Chambani Chanju similar sober, Comnaya with a son go around near Sukapche. Tingy committed by Shache, then they come to the Carson. Never say a tablet, Sarah. In the name of Shagwa. Lula so bala never chuna take up so Jinetada Jumada Jesus or Tinamati Shagwa or Tindy.
So here then, if some kind of mental or physical discomfort arises, it explains that we should see the whole world like an illusion, a mirage, a dream, and so forth. So here, if one encounters some kind of difficulty or discomfort, we should sort of take a break to alleviate that kind of discomfort. Now here, one needs to sort of rest and alleviate that in order to be able to continue to successfully meditate. So here, this can be thinking about things that the whole world is like an illusion, like a mirage or a dream, or reflecting on love and compassion, looking at sentient beings and seeing, well, it's due to their lack of knowledge that they're continuing to cycle within samsara. And so this not knowing is what makes them have to be subject to these sufferings. So here, in order to kind of take a little break to remove our mental or physical discomfort, we can reflect on things like the illusion-like nature of phenomena, or compassion.
Oh yeah, Tangan didn't saw the Lebidua. Oh, that didn't come under some. Oh, the time didn't march. That turned to us, Shirva, the Mata do it. They live song as a Casside. Did that nature be Rimbadis, etc.
No.
Nanjo be di se de wa o di ta da kar she do se na de kap ji ta do wa se ma de ta do wa se ta ta ma she to so da su ti ji chi she do wa o ta ni ga ju de sa ba de da te da nanjo be rimban di se do wa o tin de ting ji kom ju ge rimban di se chu chu chi gam se mel che tun che dam tun chi gam Geshe Yeshe Parto te konani komshi dukbar chao se. Oh, tandi kase warsana. Tedar nejo be rimba de se, rawa kurim de kone. Chozu chi kamsi de, chozu se de dende rechi se to. Nisha chiliya, tuzu chukchu che. Nisha chiliya, nime kongli sumju, chenle sumju che, nisha chiliya, tuzu chukchu che. Oh, te teni karsore. 지차질이야 초초직식도 매매 자가다 진짜 로설이야 당부 초초다도서 추 뇌제지 산드부지 뇌제지서 야 소르시체 파드네 소르제지 정부시 네 오데 이간시 때 되는 추간로고 있어라 추간로니 뒤추디 조선에 초초직식거라 야 추로니 야 초초니식거라 어 진짜 민다자 정말 법에서 단다 추주 세대도 추주 당부도 그 내제질이야 어디 이거 비제 야 토들 소르시체 연연의 소르제에서 뒤축간로 근데 조선이 양자 추주로 뒤지들 추주지식도 뒤께잖아 되니까서 뒤주듯이 war다 대단 내줘배 림반데 추주직 내가 공부해내자 멜세세도 멜시사데 지도데 그 자라체발레시고라 자라체바 소바친게 소바요라 가르치도 단단간주 신에다 라도 kumdesa 잡아다 시시디라 소치고라 딱다 공부도 딱도 어찌나시 멜세세데 소체발레 도데서 단단 디캅소 멜세데 딘데스네 디와라 nisha jilia nime konglia karsore chanyi sogora nisha jilia ngatos chitos niche nime kongla konda delia ne namde dan name sera namde dan name chashi che de odi chachik dele segara dele melsesene de wada odi jilamna.
So here, then going to where we had left off and what is new. So again, this is talking about if our mind is discouraged, then we should similarly take rest. And this is the path of engaging in a union of serenity, meditation, and insight. And it focuses on the image conceptually and non-conceptually. So then we turn to what is new for today. And it says then that thus, through this progress, a yogi should meditate on suchness for an hour or half a session in the night, or one full session, or for as long as is comfortable. So here, when it comes to the kind of demarcations of time, there was sort of a different way of dividing time in the past and in India. So the word that means what we would translate as hour is actually like a measure of water, because in India prior, they had a sort of like different sized like a vessel with water within it, and it had like, and again the measurements are like 4 fingers and 4 fingers on either side, and then you've got a hole and the water is going down into that, or sometimes they had them with like sand or things like that, where it's a container, and the descent of that marks or measures the amount of time. So it may not have been the same sort of like hour that we use, but they had a way of measuring time, as well as like when it comes to the next of these, like a session in the night, there are different ways of dividing the day out as well. So when we talk about like sort of shifts during the night, like if you had spies out watching or something, like when we talk about when we're in meditation and our introspection acting as a spy. Anyway, when it comes to the various like times of the day, they divide again, like after the afternoon, you could have like a sort of first and second sort of watch of time, and then in the evening or in the night as well. So these are just basically different kinds of measurements of time for how long one could be doing this meditation.
Oh yeah, this one. Oh, chozuchi li komna degrees, right? Melsechi li komna degrees. Me twins ko nimachil kaje komge na kom soneche. Jojo bado twinchi sigdo twinchi chozuchi stegna twinchi tangi twini tangi sero. Kom jamna kora dede. Ni dege na nime konga twini dege sera. Sum dege ne twin sum dege sera. Twin sum del sigora. Oh, tinti uchire. Oh, tinti twinchi ni nal kaje detum na oti te kore sura. Dene chisi doje bado te kona komshin do warcha so tene. Kaje bado ran shila sundi tengi komne te togu na tibado komne ten degree sura. Dene rabdo number and jebe something this hotelia rabdo number jebe something sigres. Shila sundi tengi kaje tanda tun chela soba kaje do bado te tumna. Telia tengi jitelan dene rabdo number jebe something this. Paba langar shekbala ten dos langshi kaps de son shasir. Oh yeah, teach labna.
So then it's saying that one should meditate on suchness for an hour or a half a session in the night, these sort of like watches or time periods, or one full session, or for as long as one is comfortable. So the word that they're using for session is sort of like when we have a certain number of times that we meditate during a day, when the sort of period of sitting down and doing that, we might have like a 1 session or 2 sessions, 3 sessions if you're sitting down 3 times and so forth. So however long you are able to do this, for as long as one is comfortable, one should make an effort to develop this unity, this unification of serenity and insight. And so this then continues by saying, this is the meditative stabilization, thoroughly discerning the ultimate as taught in the Descent into Lanka Sutra. So this is called in that context, the meditative stabilization, thoroughly discerning the ultimate.
Oh yeah. Standing as a derita. Don't buy it over Sravasti, Tab Janju Semda Chimba Sudim Saba Samdana Sobata Zuga, Combaletana Tarsimba Yurgura. Tab the mana ko Tarsimba Rose to Mardon. I think the Tabji Tarsimba Che Dame Bar Dame to Sravasti. Oh, the Tabda Madre Kone Paru Chimba Chaba Yamsalan Kuresa. Only talk by Sravasti. Paru to Chimba Tula Sobata Matavachan in Yamsulanko, rest shake do Antinema. Oh, yeah, the Ganesh Shadosne. Then do not think it's long de Kimotron Mashibar. Denyam do, should the Tamja Tambarangoni Meba, into Saint Janse. Should the Samatamja the Tambale, and a Kain and Nigio Mardo. Kasa in and Shanda Karina. Ko rangune duge tene rangune yo mardo che mambo che la tenjin tene ni parlo takwa sam sha ma do konangune chu cha ga do na raya che yo marwa o te tongba ni tok lo de segora ne do na tengi kimudu ma shi barse che ta tando kom dia yo ra ina ke to ma shi ba che ko dustene komete ta shula son de tengi kom go mara sam shanda na go ra. Tene dona tengen le lang des tengen makumbache kimudum mashi barta sa daga te tanda denyam do che de da tamjane to tamba ngoni meba ni yindo sen ja sa to tamba che kaya tu yo mare rangwine tu yo rawan du chen tu yo mare tenjen de bra jo che shanda la te shin del ne le pha ta ne sha ko ba cha de yo ra ina kunzub do number ne ba ni do se kunzub do Ledan Drebutan Suta Tirichala Soba, Koata Yandela Soba Tezu Yore Sora. Don't Tambachega China Raya Yomarese. Kunzum do never need to say. Teta Maina Ledan Drebu, Delbala Soba, Chita never use it. Maina, don't Tamba Gasura. Don't when you can't mato tabichato to come Gumena. Any Ledan Drebula so legend Namshala Soba. Never chagre sora. Ledan Drebula Soba Chitare, number never duty. Some den deja, Tembaniga Yores, Tombani Janja Mare, Kunzup, to Chimbachu Soba, Chambaningila Soba Congress Songo to Asura. Some den deja, one of Kawa Kunzup to Tambeton to Rashimis. Revo condition a Kawate, Kunzup some to Yore. Now on I ship temperature in your mother. Now on I ship Medembetu, Naranzo, now on I ship Medembetu Yora. When I'm Kawa Kunzup to Yore, Tantamber Yomaras, Tantamber units any Raya Shugura. Tambeton to Rashim Mesa. Oh, cheat, Kunzup to Yores, Tantamber Yomaras, Tantamber Mena, Kunzup to Lake and Dollars of Shagor, son to us. Check out that also, or Tiba to China. Yeah.
So here then it continues. We're talking about how one needs to have the method side. One needs to perfect, develop, complete the method side of the path in addition to wisdom. So it's not sufficient to just develop this wisdom realizing emptiness, but one needs to work on the practice of the perfection of generosity and ethics and all of those as well. So here, when one is developing this kind of wisdom realizing the selflessness of the person or phenomena and so forth, once they realize that person doesn't have that kind of intrinsic or inherent existence, that kind of autonomous existence, they realize that although one can't find the thing when it is searched for, there is still something that is dependently originated, that is contingently or dependently designated, that actually does exist. So here it continues in the text saying, then if you wish to arise from the concentration while your legs are still crossed, think as follows. Although ultimately all these phenomena lack identity, conventionally they definitely exist. If this were not the case, how would the relationship between cause and effect and so forth prevail? So here one may still sort of be on the cushion, but you've arisen out of the kind of meditative concentration or the insight and serenity that one was developing. But one then begins to contemplate on the fact that although all phenomena lack any kind of like ultimate existence, some kind of autonomous establishment from their own side, conventionally things exist like form and sound and so forth. They aren't completely non-existent. So here, if we don't develop the kind of method side, if one doesn't develop the practice of generosity and ethics and patience and so forth, one is unable to achieve achieve the goal that you're striving for. So it's necessary to have both method and wisdom conjoined together. And so even though we might say, well, things don't exist as they appear, they still have a conventional level of existence and are not totally non-existent. So this allows for the kind of relationship between cause and effect, as the Buddha has said.
Oh yeah. Tadi tanda di cheji chawa tingi chilaso di kumchane di te cheso chue tamje kyuma dabu tago reese. Cheto ki kapsu nyamsha mashebe kabli sungu yara. Kunzub samdu tago re, kunzub himba, kyuma itabu himba. Tanda tago re sungu toa. Tene tadi chele ya. De kare na. Ore simjen chibe lojen ditani. Ta mebe ngobo nam yeba la soba tondo be chinjulo do gyode yirimbo ko ne yonso kambe ta ge chine ja sonam da shige solan me ba yanda ba yonso soba cha de yese ta te kona ne mado be simje de zulia ninji kumju de shege do te kona ne mado be simje de zo ninji kumju de Simchen Chiba, Lojan Dedas, Chibas, Social Kill Sigurno, Puchunjuna, she samlu tamashinke. O Tilia, Chiba Sigura, Social Kill Sigara. Simchen Chiba, Lojan Dedan, only maybe Nobo Namlas, don't number maybe Nobo Namlia, Ranzula now and she temper maybe Nobo Namlia, and it don't number you ever tave, Trondon and Hajutana, Shingone, in some Trondobe. Chinchilla de Gurdesa, Lord Chinchilla de Gurde. Hearing Bur Qua Corva Nasa, Tiwan the Qua de Gordo. You also come best call like Cam Gode, Alaki, Dalaki, Tandulaki, Milaki, Condition, call Cam de Oresura. Dagis Chineja, son of the Shigit Solana, maybe Yons Sober Shades. Oh, turning a Chineja, son of the Shigit So, Niga Yons Sober Shades. 시기 소스 동반이 공부를 소바 시럽기 차들의 시기 소스라 선남지 소스를 침바 수좀 써봐 잠바 닝질라 소바 군주 비치 유도 진게게 람기 남솔네 자투들이야 네 군주 비차스기 와도 단단바다 군주 니갈 땡고 와도 원예 매번 거불라 소바 도바 친질라도 그데 유리 코로나 용수 캠베다가 지내자 손남다 시기 소절라나 매바 용수 조버를 차대서 손남비 소스도 상배차도 시거라 침바다 참바닝질라 소바 시기 소스 동반이라 소바 시럽지 차들의 시기 소스고라 상계보다 손이 싸고라도 손남다 시기 소스도 손남지 소되게 수고된 누구야라 시기 소되게 최고서나 상계기 투 넘버 탐제 캠베 시다 녀모보다 시제티바 빵바 세바들이야 추구세도 시추구세라 오니구세라 아니 수구스도 구수도 시와라 자 초니니가 거래 따단데 하샹다 대조산에 시잖아 지야 일을 마셔봐도 겁나들 마도 신다 침바다 수dim라 소바테서 곰고마리 냠솔랑 고마리 뜰 냠솔랑에 과거를 시와라 어디 말했지 니가 거래 상계발이야 탑단 실험 니가 거래 손놈 대시 손이가 거래 티셔도 이런 뭐 과거나 캠베 다게 지내자 손놈 대시기 소 나는 매번 용서 쪽버리자 돼서 손이 용서 쪽버리기 해서 다 사기서다 되네 그거는 근데 탐제 김배 공부 토벌 잘하시라. 손이 저버고네 탐제 김배 공부 토벌 잘라. 대다자 중이 콘도 쳐버 자오냠도 삼모서. 동반이게 내주시면 생게 심제도 안에 내로 심바치기 해서 최근 내주시면 생게도 최근 내주시바치기 냠도 삼로 거기요 아래서 토기요 아래서 거라. 어디 봐도 신다야.
So here then, again, this is sort of how we meditate or continue our understanding in the period of subsequent attainment, when we have recognized that the person and all phenomena are empty of any kind of intrinsic existence, recognizing these phenomena to be illusion-like. This is how we sort of handle the periods between our formal kind of meditation on emptiness. So here again, the Buddha has also said, things are produced conventionally, but ultimately they lack intrinsic identity. So sentient beings with a childish attitude exaggerate phenomena, thinking of them as having an intrinsic identity when they lack it. So here, this kind of then pivots into how one develops compassion in the periods of subsequent attainment based upon this understanding of emptiness, as well as things existing in conventionally in an illusion-like way. So here, this childish attitude refers to that of ordinary beings. To them, things appear to have this kind of real, true existence, but they don't actually exist in that way. But it is due to this misperception, thinking that phenomena have some kind of intrinsic identity and grasping after that they continue to cycle in cyclic existence. So thus attributing intrinsic existence to those things that lack it, it confuses their minds and they wander in cyclic existence for a long time. And so then one thinks, for these reasons, I shall endeavor without fail to achieve the omniscient state by accomplishing the unsurpassable accumulations of merit and wisdom in order to help them realize suchness. So here, in order to be able to truly benefit sentient beings, one needs to attain that state of Buddhahood. And in order to do that, one needs both the accumulations of merit as well as that of wisdom. So the accumulation of merit refers to those practices of generosity and ethics and patience and so forth, the kind of conventional side of things. And the practice of wisdom, the accumulation of wisdom, is based upon our analysis and insight that is the sort of ultimate side of things. Now here, one needs both accumulations in order to achieve Buddhahood, the merit, the accumulation of merit being the substantial cause for the form body of a Buddha, and that the accumulation of wisdom being the cause of the Dharmakaya, or the truth body of a Buddha. And so here, in contrast to the kind of attitude of Hashang, which is stop all mental activity, and that's going to get you out of this cycle of samsara, here one recognizes that, well, in order to attain Buddhahood, you can't just sort of withdraw from objects, but rather one has to accumulate these two vast accumulations of wisdom and merit. So one needs to engage in the practices of generosity and so forth, that kind of the conventional side of things, as well as developing wisdom, this ultimate side of the path, in order to be able to free other sentient beings who are wandering in samsara due to their ignorance. So here, this is a kind of understanding of the necessity of both accumulations, which is wrapped up in our appreciation of the importance of emptiness, as well as generating compassion for sentient beings who lack that understanding.
Oh yeah. Tandine ma dishik do. Tene debi kimutung shik desik do. Tagi ko komsa ne komja dede sila sonri tinga ji komya shahar ma do. Kitung shi yo ma ra tante tedi yo ra. Ta kimutung pa shi ne si go ra. Kangba kitung je tedi pa shi ne si go lolo che ra. Tene debi kimutung shi de cho chuna shukbe sanje da chanju semba tamje la cha che la se. Da cho chuna shukbe sanje da chanju semba tamje 류도 차체기 선 매버서 수수 류는 비고네 차체네 시고라 차체라세 대달라 최바다 떠바차세 대달 최바 피에다 대바 피에라 소바체 파고 상부 최바라 소바 너람 자체부 다보세 상주근 고대 양라 뜸버치바 어디 되나네 야부여도 디단다 가르셰도스네 띵에 대바로 계획 소체서 주바세도 땡라 메베 네 계획 소체서 주바세 Tene chochuna shube sanjeda la soba da o tezu samatam jalia sheba pura soba chaja da cheje shaba da chesu irase namjinga jo yala temba doge ba o de konane keve so chesu tuba sigdo tenla mebe konane gazu cheje keve so chesu tuba chacha chochuna shube sanjetam jalia baba che shube shuse changmalya sosu le mambo jato mambo trene chacha ya dirwa 차차야 돼 나게 시외 체도 이제로 나게 시외 나게 그냥 물이 차차 신달 구십제야 차차와세 아니 저바 표와 저전에 저바 산지대 전주 선바 탐절이야 소소 딱고 송하다 마송 wen직내기 감기 이만다와 지신 메달라 소바 저저 강가야 표해들 저바 표에 들어와 됐으니 뭐 소소를 예배 론주다 잠불린 예배 시르자와 강김을 소바 이동을 착하리네 뜻을 강가에 표쳐도 찾아와다 최신에서 됐으니 못이라 샤바다세 니 띠방아 샤바 띠바도들 샤바치 단다다 천딜레 샤바 띠바카리나 삼르타 땡기니 티체메나 저 통만 매반에 샤발에 소바테줄 샤바치에더라 대띠베니 몰파 샤바치네 따르고다 아니 제수에란세 신게 개월에 제수에란지야 어신다 상계의 장주 선보 소소교게 교화가르사기네 테줄이야 제수에란세 빼야고래서 디제는 소소를 쓰나 마부터 göra 가란제니 신다 야부전에 차도히에 냐게요라 신다 개와 야부 간데 징그노 빼야고래 메디스남사 드가 삼 제수에란제나 소소를 개와 마부터 göra 차도 그냥 버려지래 신다 차도 마셔지 신게 야부전에 들 제수에란제 그래서라 어디게 되니 개와 마부터 göra 퍼져되게 개와 사고는 시랑은 단대 토기 있어라. 단대르시. 단대 수준에. 차차라 차저도 최셔에 제수이라 글신세. 아니 소준의 수배 간사한테 가셔 상견에 단대 최만손이 쇼된 게들 최송으로 지스라가 소았다네. 최송의 쉐기 쉐소 삼나. 이 최봉게 레삭 발라서 고티바 마부다 두고다. 세진 사바다 제수이라 글신세 최송으로 나와서 꾸마치거라. 아니 최송게 삼 최송 바셔기 최송 삼거라. 소아데서 상계다 장주선바 마부 다 양헬에 대게 심제 되시다 제토 모두 공개토들이야 양헬에 만대베셔 공부 마줘버셔 단다 유령부슈로나 심제의 최송제 유령부슈로나 소아담네 쉐기 최송 삼나 소소 체령부도야다 소나 마부사고도 아니 대개와 강가데 야라 등기권에 단자 사셔베 개와 검개보다 강가 심제 탐제가 두통된 상계지 고반토베 규르규르지에서 제송화체 그래서 어때 봐도 지구나 샤샤나.
So here, following then the kind of meditation, again, one has sort of arisen from the meditation mentally, but is still sitting on one's cushion in this kind of Vajra posture. And it says, then slowly arise from the cross-legged position and make prostration to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions. Now, one here can do an actual, can actually get up and make a prostration or do this through visualization. But one can then engage in making offerings and singing their praises and making vast prayers by reciting the prayer of noble conduct, sometimes referred to as the king of prayers, and so forth. And so here, one can do this sort of seven-limbed prayer from the king of prayers or the prayer of good conduct, going through this following one's meditation. So sort of following after that, one can imagine doing prostrations to all of the Buddhas, visualizing as many bodies as there are atoms in the world, and visualize making offerings, offerings of things that are owned by you or not owned by you, and so forth. And here, each of these again is acting as kind of an antidote. So our making prostrations is an antidote to our pride, is an antidote to the kind of disrespect that we might show others. So we make prostrations and then we engage in making offerings, all the kind of pleasant things that we can imagine actually offered and then imagined as offered as well. This acts as an antidote to any kind of miserliness or stinginess, that sense of not wanting to give things. We can counteract that through our practice of offering. And then there is confession, engaging in a kind of purification, generating regret for those actions that we have done that we can actually remember, or those that have been done in previous lives. Again, that's going to act as an antidote to all kinds of negativities. And then there is rejoicing. Rejoicing in the virtues of others is something that can bring us a great deal of merit. And it also acts as an antidote to our jealousy. There's the danger if we see others doing lots of positive things or good things, and we give rise to jealousy rather than rejoicing, having a sense of appreciation and joy in the merit that they have generated. So instead, we should really think about others' merits with a sense of great joy, and that rejoicing will lead to our gaining merit as well. And then there is requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma. This purifies the negativities that we gain from abandoning the Dharma. So this counteracts that. And then there is beseeching the Buddhas to remain and teach for a long time. So long as they are here, they can work to fulfill the aims of beings. But if they are to pass into nirvana, they no longer do that. So our making that kind of request can lead to our gaining a great deal of merit, as well as lengthening our life and so forth. And then finally, we end with a kind of dedication, a dedication of whatever virtues we have accumulated in the course of that short prayer, but also the kind of the virtues that we have accumulated through our meditation. We should end then with a dedication of all of those virtues toward the great enlightenment, toward the benefit of ourselves and others.
Oh, yeah, that is so, ne? This is also. Oh, yeah.
This is also 진짜 제마제요, no?
Thank you so much for these precious teachings, Geshe Thabkhe. Thank you for the translation, Katrina. Thank you for joining us online. We'll have teachings again next week on Saturday, 9 a.m. Pacific time. So now be finished with our dedication prayers.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path and all spiritual friends who practice it have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Losong's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Niryatayami. Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. In the snowy mountain pure land, you're the source of good and happiness. Powerful Tenzing Gyatso Chenrezi, may you stay until samsara ends.